Hello guys, my name's Owen, I'm a Christian, and today I'm going to be studying the Quran. Actually, this is a series that we're going to be starting. I'm going to be going through the whole Quran, that's the plan anyway, surah by surah, learning about the Quran. I've never read it before, I've heard bits and bobs about it and this sort of thing, and I've got random quotes from it, but I want to study it fully. It's something I've been wanting to do for the past couple of weeks now, and I thought, let's just get this started. Okay, so this is going to be the first episode and hopefully a series where I'm going to be studying the Quran, and hopefully you can come along for the journey as well. We're going to be starting off with Surah 1, and that's what we cover in today's video. But just before we get into that, let's do a bit of an introduction, because it's obviously the first video in the series. I'm just going to explain what this is going to be about, what my purpose is, how I'm going to approach this, and all this sort of thing. But first of all, a bit of a background about myself. So, I might have mentioned it. My name's Owen. I used to be an atheist, and then when I was about 17 years old, I became a born-again Christian. So I'm now 19, so sort of been it for 2 years. My denomination, in terms of Christianity, because there's lots of different denominations like Protestant and Catholic and Methodist and all this sort of stuff. I kind of just follow the Bible, this is the Bible here. I just follow the Bible. I don't really do any of that denomination stuff. I think technically, I mostly align with independent Baptist churches, but really I just sort of follow the Bible, and that's how I do it. Okay. So how this series came about, basically, for a few weeks now, I've been wanting to read the Quran for a few weeks. I've actually bought one, but I hadn't been reading it consistently for the past couple of weeks. Okay. And at the same time, what I've done is I've started this YouTube channel, and I've been praying for what to do with this channel. And then I was in the middle of a swimming session, and an idea for it just suddenly came. I'm just swimming front crawl up and down, and the idea just popped in the middle of my head. And it was just thinking about this kind of series. I was just thinking about I was wanting someone to challenge the Bible. I was wanting someone to do a series like this for the Bible, where basically they look at it from a third person perspective, whether that's an atheist studying the Bible, or a Muslim studying the Bible, or a Hindu studying the Bible. I was thinking that would be so cool to watch, like an atheist or someone of another religion studying the Bible, where they're learning about it for the first time and they're challenging it. Because then it forces sort of me to go through it book by book. Because with the Bible, I haven't seen every single verse in here. I haven't seen every single chapter. I haven't read, but I haven't read Old Testament, not really that much. New Testament, I've done a decent amount of it, especially Paul's letters and stuff. But I was thinking that would be really helpful for me as a Christian to go and watch someone else sort of going through the Bible and looking at all these different chapters and verses and all this sort of thing. And then there's a quote in the Bible which is "Iron sharpens iron." Okay, and that's really what I was looking for. Someone who could go through the Bible and sort of dissect it and this sort of thing and sort of challenge me on my own faith. And then I thought, well, I can do this for the Quran. In the sense that I, as a Christian, I haven't read the Quran before. I can go through it surah by surah and just learn about it and sort of see what's going on with it. Okay? And hopefully that will help a bunch of people. And I'll go into it in a second what sort of the overall purpose of this series is going to be. Okay, but it's iron sharpens iron, just like a man sharpens the countenance of his friend. Okay? By the way, if anyone's got a YouTube, I've just given you a YouTube video idea right there. Muslim studies the Bible, Hindu studies the Bible, atheist studies the Bible. YouTube ideas for you there. So what this series is going to be is me going through the Quran, surah by surah. Like I said, we'll just see how long this goes on for. How many surahs are there? I feel there's 70 or 80 or 90 or something. I don't think I've... Okay, I've just checked. Apparently there's 114 surahs. So maybe we can do 114 videos on it. Maybe I'll have to split them down. I haven't really read the Quran yet, so I don't know how big the chapters are. We'll just sort of playing it by ear. And hopefully it's going to be engagement with you guys in the comments as well, which I'll explain. So my mindset going into this, and sort of hopefully yours, is based on a couple of these passages. Okay, so there's one passage which is, "Study to show thyself approved unto God, a workman that need not to be ashamed, rightly dividing the word of truth." Okay, that's talking about when you're reading the Bible, you need to make sure you study it and actually understand that you're rightly dividing it. Because a lot of people read the Bible and they misunderstand it. Okay, and I imagine that could be the same thing with the Quran. People could read that, take a quote out of context, and misunderstand it. Which is why I sort of want to go through it and study it properly, and which is why I'm planning to go surah by surah and do the whole thing and sort of study the entire context of it to learn about it. There's another quote from the Bible which is, "Always be prepared to give an answer to everyone who asks you to give the reason for the hope that you have." I had a discussion with someone, and we were talking about our different religions. He's Muslim, I'm Christian, and we were just asking each other why we're Christian, why we're Muslim. And I don't think I necessarily had the best answer in the world for Christianity. And I wanted to sort of learn more so that I can give an answer when people ask why I'm a Christian. Okay, and the best way I can give that is if I've actually studied the other religions. That's really why I want to study Islam. I want to study the Quran. Okay, so my sort of mindset going into this is learning how to righteously defend my faith, okay, which is Christianity, but at the same time seeking the truth. And this is like the key thing. These three ones key thing here is throughout this whole thing, I'm going to be seeking the truth. I'm going to be being intellectually honest, and I'm going to be logical. And let me just give you an example. There's a bit in the Bible which says, if Christ has not been raised, so raised from the dead, our preaching is useless, and so is your faith. That's a literal quote from the Bible saying, if Jesus Christ did not die and was not raised from the dead, Christianity is not a real thing. So my mindset there is, if someone could 100% equivocally prove to me that Jesus Christ didn't die on the cross and was not raised from the dead, then I can safely say I'm not going to be a Christian anymore. And that's the same mindset I'm going into studying this Qur'an with, which is I'm going to almost look at it for what it is, okay? I'm going to be intellectually honest, logical, and seeking the truth. And I hope the people watching, whoever you are, so this is for absolutely anyone who's watching this, atheist, Christian, Muslim, any other religion, I hope you can go into it with the same sort of mindset, which is seeking the truth, being intellectually honest, and all this sort of thing. So how you might personally... Oh, one more actually, I missed it. By the way, I'm learning throughout this. I'm not a teacher. So this isn't going to be like me teaching you what the Quran means, because obviously I'm reading it for the first time and I'm not an expert, right? This is more just me, because the thing is, right, when I was thinking about this YouTube channel, I was thinking, I need to learn way more. Like, I need to learn way more about the Quran, way more about the Bible before I'm qualified to speak on it, because I'm not really that qualified to speak on it. So what I was going to do is I was going to study the Bible and study the Quran for ages and then make videos. And then it's like, okay, so then do I not do anything for like 1 or 2 or 3 years and then make videos? Or it's just, do I document my journey? This is almost like me documenting my journey of learning the Quran. So these videos aren't going to be me teaching anything, it's me learning. You're going to see me learning, and hopefully you can learn at the same time. And that's why things about the comments are going to be super useful, because I'm going to be asking questions and you can correct me and all that sort of stuff, because I'm just really learning here. So how you might benefit from this is learning the truth and being correct about salvation. So I was talking about this with someone. It was like, I think this is the most important conversation to be having, which is like, where's your faith? What religion are you? Because it's the one thing you really don't want to get wrong. Because, for example, if Christianity is true, everyone who's not a true Christian will go to hell, which is eternal gnashing of teeth and wailing and suffering. And you don't want to do this. You don't want to get that wrong, right? Similarly, if, for example, I don't really know, if Islam, for example, is true, if you're a Muslim and you follow it, you'll be able to go to heaven. Again, not at this stage, that's what I'm going to be learning. I don't really know how heaven works, but I'm assuming it's something like, if you're a Muslim, you go to heaven. If you're not, you won't. Therefore, you don't want to get that wrong. So that's why I think like these conversations and this studying is so important, because it's like, what do you want to bank your salvation on? You want to be informed about that, right? Because if you get this wrong, the religion you choose or the faith you choose, then it could end up in hell. Okay? You also might be challenged during this. Okay? If you're a Muslim, I might be challenging you on some verses. But at the same time, there might be some verses in here which challenge me as a Christian. Or they might challenge people who are atheists. Okay? When you're learning the truth as well, another thing here is seeing it from an unbiased perspective. And when I say unbiased, I mean I am a Christian, so like there's obviously that there. But it's like there are some verses which you might not have been taught in the Quran. It might not get taught to you. I'm going through it surah by surah, everything there, everything that I see. So it's sort of like we're going to see every single thing here. No one can hide away anything like that. Okay, so you might be challenged. And also it might strengthen the reasons behind your own faith, whether you are atheist, Christian, Muslim, or whatever, because you're learning more. Like the whole purpose of this, if I could summarize this series into one thing, it's just learning more about this. Okay? So, how to make the most of the series from your end? Number one, don't take my word for anything. Do your own research. Okay, like I said, I'm here learning. I'm not teaching anything. So, literally, don't believe anything I say. Go and do your own research, okay? Ask any questions to me in the comments if there's something you want me to look at, or if there's something I've missed in this sort of thing. This is where you guys can be really useful. Answer my questions, because, like I said, I'm an expert. I'm going to be asking some questions. And correct me on anything I'm wrong on. If there's anything I've done wrong, just let me know. Another thing is I'm going to be using these Notion notes. Sorry, another thing is you can use these Notion notes. So I've put this all together into an organized document because, like I said, I want to learn and I want to help other people learn sort of about the Quran and what it contains. So all the notes and the links and the references and the research and this sort of thing, I'm going to be putting it for every single video in the description. You can go and click those notes, see the links, do your own research and learn more. Okay. Final thing is, everyone just be happy. I personally aren't going to get offended by anything anyone's putting in the comments, and I just hope we can have a constructive discussion. Me personally, like debates and this sort of thing, and looking at different religions, that's like my favorite type of conversation to have. So I'm really looking forward to having a look at the Quran, seeing what it says. So yeah, I personally won't be offended, and I hope everyone can just have a constructive discussion. And at the end of the day, it's like anyone can do what they want, right? It's up to you which religion or faith you want to follow. But it's just cool, kind of interesting to have the discussion about it and learn a bit more. So yeah, I know that's a bit boring. That's what the admin. I won't be doing that every episode. From now on, the episodes will just crack straight into it. But that's like what this whole series is about. So I hope it's going to be useful for myself, really. I hope it's going to be useful for myself, but hopefully there's other people out there who are going to get value from this. So the passage today is Surah 1, which is this. Okay, so it's quite a short one. In the name of Allah, the most compassionate, most merciful. All praise is for Allah, Lord of all worlds, the most compassionate, most merciful, Master of the Day of Judgment. You alone we worship, and you alone we ask for help. Guide us along the straight path, the paths of those you have blessed, not those you are displeased with, or those who are astray. So just 7. What are these? 7 verses? So yeah, these will be verses, won't they? So that's just 7 verses for us there. That was the wrong button. That's the right button. There we go. So the first thing I took from this passage, and let me just do this so we can switch between them easily, is the first thing was talking about 99 beautiful names. Okay, Allah in this verse has been given 2 names or titles, which I can see here, which are the most compassionate and the most merciful. Okay, and from what I know and from what I've researched, this is going to be sort of an ongoing theme that's going to be happening throughout the Quran, which is all these different sorts of names and titles which they can give people. So on Wikipedia, if I just open this up for you, it looks like there's basically 99 names. Okay, so let's read these surahs. This is a surah from a bit later. Allah has the most beautiful names, so call upon him by them and keep away from those who abuse his names. They'll be punished for what they used to do. Okay. And these are from hadiths, which we'll get into all that a bit later, with my understanding of that. Allah has 99 names. There are 99 names for Allah. So essentially this list on Wikipedia shows a whole bunch of names, sort of titles, the Great, the Preserver, the Nourisher. And these names looks like it needs to be used in a certain way. That's what it's saying here. When it says, keep away from those who abuse his names, they will be punished for what they used to do. So it seems like from the research I've been doing, with these titles that Allah has, these names, you can't just throw them around. They're specific to him. So, for example, you couldn't go and say that I am the most compassionate. I think I saw someone. Would that be shirk? Let me see. I think that might be shirk. There's a lot of like names I'm getting used to, but I think that would be shirk if you called yourself the most compassionate. Again, comments, correct me if I'm wrong. You can't call yourself or someone the most compassionate. These are titles exclusively for Allah. They will be punished for what they used to do if you abuse those names. So there's a website, and I've got all my references down at the bottom, which said these sort of rules. Okay, so this isn't coming from the Quran, but it looks like from the research I was doing, this is sort of the what you can do with his names. Allah should be referred to as described by him and his prophet. Allah must be referred to as he has referred to himself. Allah is referred to without giving him the attribute of his creation. And 2 key ones here. God's creation should not be given any of his attributes. Allah's name cannot be given to his creatures. Okay, so like I said, I couldn't go and call myself the most compassionate. I couldn't go and call someone the most merciful, because those are one of Allah's 99 beautiful names, which you can't use. Okay, so that was all the first thing that I got from this passage, and I think this is going to be useful a bit later in the Quran. So especially in surahs 1 and 2 and maybe 3 as well, a lot of what we're going to be doing is sort of foundational stuff. It's just learning about it. I'm sort of coming at this like as if because I know a bit about Islam, but it's almost coming at it like with a blank slate. What does the Quran tell us about Islam? And we can just go on from there. Okay, so that was the first thing about the 99 beautiful names. The next one was about the straight path. So those are the names, and they're actually like the names are so important that they've been repeated. So it's mentioned in the first verse there, and it's also repeated in the third verse. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, this line gets repeated at the start of every surah. Yeah, it does. In the name of Allah, most gracious, most merciful. So it's an important thing. So the second thing I got from this passage is the straight path. So if we come down to 5 and 6, you alone we worship, and you alone we ask for help. Okay, again, this is something we're going to get into a bit later, just something I've noticed now. The you alone, that's suggesting monotheism. It's suggesting one God. It's just Allah. There's no other gods or anything like that. It's just Him alone. So that's something definitely that we'll take note of, that we can explore later. Okay, but in particular, what I noticed was guide us along the straight path. And that seems to be, from how I was looking at it, seems to be almost like a metaphor for what you want to do as a Muslim. Okay, so from one of these references, what going along the straight path means is, and so what this statement means: guide us along the straight path, show us the truth and the importance of the truth, remove the obstacles of seeing that truth, allow us to act upon the truth, keep us firm and steadfast in those actions. Okay, and sort of the equivalents I was thinking was things like in Islam you might have the straight path, and that, from what I can tell, is a metaphor for how to live your life in order to end up in Jannah, which I believe is the Islam version of heaven. Okay, with my pronunciation, by the way, I don't speak Arabic or anything, obviously, so I'm just giving it a go. Let me know in the comments if I'm doing good or I can be improved or anything like that. I immediately thought of like Buddhism, how Buddhism, there's the Eightfold Path, and for what I understand, the Eightfold Path, you follow it and then eventually you reach Nirvana, which is like sort of enlightenment. That's the whole purpose of Buddhism, is reaching Nirvana. And then you have Christianity. Obviously, I'm the Christian, so I was thinking about what's the equivalent of that. Is there's not as an important equivalent, but I was just thinking about the narrow gate, the metaphor of the narrow gate. It's from Matthew: enter through the narrow gate, for wide is the gate and broad is the road that leads to destruction, and many enter through it. But small is the gate and narrow the road that leads to life, and only a few find it. And that's all the purpose of Christianity, is entering through that narrow gate in order to get to the kingdom of heaven. So those are just some equivalents I was thinking of. So coming back to this, what does this mean, guide us along the straight path? Well, that's guiding us to the truth and allowing us to act upon that truth. Okay, so how do we know what this truth is? How do we know what the straight path is? Because that's what they're saying here. Guide us along the straight path. Okay, what is the straight path? How do we know what the straight path is? That was my next question. The moment I read that was sort of, so you're sort of seeing like how my mind's working as I'm going through this passage. I saw that it says guide us along the straight path. Okay, what is the straight path? How do we know what the straight path is? Okay, and from my research, it looks like that's going to be sort of the whole purpose of the Quran, which is why I sort of see this straight path as like a metaphor. It's a metaphor, from what I can tell, of Islam as being a metaphor of what you need to do or what you need to follow or how you need to act in order to get to Jannah. Okay, so couple of surahs here. Obviously, when I'm mentioning surahs here, it's just because I've seen these or I found these in my research, and I'm just bringing them forward because they're relevant. Obviously, when in like the next video I go through Surah 2, I'll bring this up again, and if we get to 33 and 42 and that sort of thing, I'll be going those as well. So how do you know what the straight path is? This quote here says, "This is the book, there is no doubt about it, a guide for those mindful of Allah." So from that, it seems like the Quran is going to tell us. And that's why I've seen like the straight path seems to be a metaphor of how you need to act, and the book, the Quran, is going to show you how to do it. And there's no doubt about that. Okay, indeed, in the Messenger of Allah, you have an excellent example for whoever has hope in Allah and the Last Day and remembers Allah often. Okay, and this is from what I've been gauged is like there's two sources of knowledge for how to be a good Muslim, which is the Quran, but then also the Sunnah of the Prophet. And the Sunnah of the Prophet, from what I can tell, is the life of Muhammad and his actions and teachings and all that sort of thing. Okay, and he's an excellent example for whoever has hope in Allah. And then here, and you, the Prophet, are truly leading all to the straight path, the path to Allah. Okay, so what I've gained from this essentially is the straight path is going to be told to us throughout. So obviously it doesn't say it right now because it's just one line. Guide us along the straight path. It doesn't go into what the straight path is. That's basically the purpose of the rest of this book, right? the Quran is going to tell us, but also the Sunnah of the Prophet, and that's going to be told through the Hadiths. That's my understanding, and again, that's why the comments are useful, because I want you guys to let me know if I'm understanding this correctly. Okay, so the Quran and the Sunnah are going to teach us what the straight path is, and the straight path is said to take you to Jannah, which is like basically heaven. That's my understanding of this. So, what is the path not? Okay, so the straight path is going to be revealed throughout the rest of the Quran. What is it not, particularly looking at 1:7, where it says, "Guide us along the straight path, the path of those you have blessed, not those you are displeased with, or those who are astray." This seems to be very specific, okay? So we want to go down the straight path, which is of those you have blessed, but not those you are displeased with, or those who are astray. That's what it's specifically not about. Now, when I was looking at some commentaries and doing some research, I stumbled on a guy called Ibn Kathir. And what my understanding is, there's the tafsir, and a tafsir is the scholarly interpretation and explanation of Quranic verses. And Ibn Kathir is a highly renowned tafsir. No, he's a highly renowned mufassir, which is a person who writes the tafsir. Yep. So yeah, Ibn Kathir. So he writes like a commentary basically on the Quran, and it's well renowned in the Sunni Muslim world. And I know that's another thing, Sunni and Shia, and maybe we'll get to that in a different video. But apparently he's a good source for understanding and interpreting what the Quran says. And when I was reading his interpretation of what Surah 1:7 means, he was saying these were specifically referring to certain things, which is, don't lead us to the path of those you were displeased with. He suggested this refers to the Jews, and not to the path of those who are astray. He suggested that this refers to the Christians. So the paths you are displeased with, that was supposedly the Jews, because essentially the Jews were given knowledge, but they didn't act upon it. Okay, for example, they didn't recognize the prophets. For example, they didn't recognize Prophet Muhammad. They also didn't recognize Jesus as the Messiah. They rejected Jesus. They actually went and killed Jesus on the cross, which again is a bit different in Islam, but they rejected the Messiah. Okay, and there's also some things about them rejecting the Sabbath and all this sort of thing. We'll get into it later when we get into later episodes. But it seems like that, because to me it's very specific. Like, it could have just said, "Guide us along the straight path of those you have blessed, and not those of anyone else." Like, he could have just said that, but it was very specific of splitting this into two groups: you are displeased with, or those you are astray. And this is something that I've been very interested in since I sort of became a Christian. Was what is it? And there's something I really didn't understand for a long time. Was the Abrahamic religions, which are essentially Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. It's sort of like suggested that these are all like one category of religion, sort of around the same God. Hypothetically, that's how you can think about it. So it's been really interesting to me. Is I want to understand what the difference is between these. So that's why this sort of categorization was interesting. So those who were displeased with are supposedly the Jews, because Allah is angry with those because they didn't act upon the knowledge they had, and they sort of rejected the Messiah. They didn't follow the law, didn't follow the Sabbath, and all this sort of thing. And then the path of those who are astray, this is supposedly the Christians, because they've deviated from what they were given, because they thought Jesus was God, and they believe in the Trinity, which goes against Islam, as we'll find out later. So that's just very interesting, just seeing that the straight path is not Christians and Jews. And one thing I'm looking at that's going to be interesting while studying this is seeing, okay, what does happen to Christians and Jews? How do they go to heaven? Do they go to hell? And how do Muslims go to heaven or hell? Because like I said this in the introduction, this is such a key question. Okay, why? Like, you want to be correct about your religion or faith, because if you're wrong, then you might go to hell, and you don't want to go to hell. So like that's what's really interesting to me, is finding out, okay, in Islam, how do you go to heaven? And in Islam, what happens if you're a Christian or a Jew? How do you get to heaven? How do you not get to heaven? And that sort of thing. Okay, so that's sort of the foundational stuff, the two main points there that I've got from this about the names, and that's going to come in useful later, and also the straight path, and sort of these assumptions here about the Quran and the Sunnah being like the guides for Muslims. Okay, so I've got some questions now for next time, and hopefully if you're watching this to this point, I really appreciate you. Anyone who's watching this and you want to stick around for the series, that'd be awesome. I'd love to have you. Absolutely, everybody is welcome. If you're watching this and you're maybe a Muslim and you know the answer to these, it'd be awesome if you could like put it in the comments down below, because that will help me as we go on to the next surah. So these are sort of the conclusions or assertions which I've come up with. And I just wanted to check if I'm correct, because these are going to affect sort of the lens of how I look through this. Okay. When I'm looking at the Quran and when I'm reading it, am I supposed to be looking at this as a document which needs to be updated for the present day? Because this is something that happens a lot with Christianity, which is supposedly certain things are out of date, right? And they need to go and be updated for modern audiences. And it's in particular talking about sort of sexuality things, sexual immorality, I should say, and like different things to do with like what's sexually moral, what's sexually immoral, and sort of stuff. There's that discussion there with, does the Bible need to be updated for modern audiences? I don't think it does. I think like the Bible stays. You're not going to go and change the Bible. Okay, Paul talks about if you see anyone preaching any other gospel, they're accursed. Okay, like the Bible is the Bible. From what I gather, I think the Quran is the same, which the Quran is incorruptible and it's the word of God and does not need to be changed for modern context. Okay, but let me know in the comments if I'm incorrect there. Seems like as well the Prophet is a perfect example for Muslims, which is what I got from this surah. Where is it? Which is in the Messenger of Allah. You have an excellent example there. And finally, Allah's names are for his use only and cannot be assigned to any of his creatures, which we got from this first one up here. Like I said, I just want to double check that that's correct and I'm not getting anything wrong here. Okay, and also sort of a hierarchy. I just wanted to, because I think a lot in diagrams, and it's really important that I just get this lens right before I start going through it and all this sort of thing. So, in terms of like level of authority, I just realized I got that apostrophe on the wrong bit. In terms of level of authority, is this like perfect, the Sunnah, and then like good but could be wrong, good but could be wrong, and good but could be wrong? And here do you have things like, for example, do you have the hadiths? From what I can understand, it's like the hadiths are narrations about the Prophet's life, so the Prophet's Sunnah, but obviously they could have been written down incorrectly. And that's why there's like authentic hadiths and inauthentic hadiths, right? So you have that. And then, like I said, you also have the tafsir, which is like the commentary. And then there are also things like the sahaba and the tabi'un, which these seem like testimonies from people, sahaba, people who were around when the Prophet was alive, and tabi'un is people who are around, they were the descendants who weren't around when Muhammad was alive, but were just after it. From what I understand, I think those are the sources that Muslims use. If I've missed any, let me know, and if I've categorized them any incorrectly, let me know. But I think it's like the Quran and the Sunnah is perfect. The hadiths, if it's authentic, then it's good. But if it's inauthentic, it's not. And then these are just some other things that, again, they could be wrong because they're not the word of God or anything, but they are helpful for doing things, just like I've done there with Ibn Kathir. Okay, so let me know. Put down in the comments if I'm right on those things. That'll be really helpful for when I go through Surah 2 now, if I can now go at it with this lens. So just let me know if that's right. And finally, the question for any Muslims who are watching is, I don't really know how the different translations of the Quran work. So for the Bible, there are different like sort of translations, and it's like word for word, and there's like thought for thought, and it's like on the left here, it's a bit more, it can be a bit more difficult to read sometimes, whereas paraphrase, it's like you understand it a lot more, but it's not as accurate. So this is like very accurate, but can be difficult to understand. This is easy to understand, but it's like much less accurate. So for example, the message is not accurate at all. I personally use the King James version. The church I go to at the moment, and what a lot of people use in the UK, is the NIV, which is easy to read, but I think the KJV is more accurate, so I can go with KJV. So this was something I really struggled with at the start when I became a Christian, because obviously I'm atheist, so I didn't know anything about anything. I was really, what Bible do I want? And some guy I was watching on YouTube, he just said, get the KJV, and since then I've done research, and KJV is the one to go with for Christianity. I don't know how it works at all with Islam. Okay, so the hard copy I've got is this one here. I've linked the Amazon in case anyone wants to go and check it. Is by Abdullah Yusuf Ali, and from the Amazon page, it said like this was a very good translation that a lot of people, like it says on the back here, this translation by Abdullah Yusuf Ali is considered to be the most faithful rendering available in English. Quran.com, they use a different translation, and that's what I've been linking here. I don't know what their different translation is, so I don't know if is Quran.com a good source. I've also heard something about Sahih International. I've seen like screenshots of that. Is that a good translation? So it would just be helpful, yeah, if anyone knows, put that in the comments and let me know. It is Abdullah Yusuf Ali, is that a good translation? Is Quran.com good? Should I be using Sahih International or whatever? That'd be super useful. So yeah, comment the answers if you know them down below, and also ask any questions in the comments. And remember to like if you enjoyed, dislike if you didn't, and you can subscribe if you want to be notified about the next one. Put the references down here. The Notion page will be down below in case you want to go have a look at any of the links and go and do your own research and that sort of thing. But yeah, quite a short one today. I know I had a lot of talking at the start about all this introduction stuff. Quite a short thing, but I think this was good because it's got our foundations here. I'm now starting to understand from like not really understanding it at all. I'm now sort of understanding from what I can tell. The Quran is essentially going to be telling us this straight path, which is going to lead to Jannah, and the Quran and the Sunnah are, I believe, perfect, and the Quran's incorruptible, I believe. So that's a good lens, if I've got that right, to move on to the next one. So in the next video, we're going to be going on to book 2. I've already read book 2, but I haven't sort of typed it up and done more research and this sort of thing. So I'm going to be reading it a couple more times, going doing a bunch of research, putting this document together, and then hopefully we can go and learn some things with book 2. So yeah, if anyone knows the answer to those questions, I'd really appreciate you putting it in the comments down below. That would really help, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care. Bye.